I started watching Girlfriends, and the episode that I was watching made me want to share something that I haven't really shared about before. So that is what I am going to be talking about in this video. I just watched an episode of Girlfriends where Maya was trying to conceive and went to the doctor and like had Darnell tested, and he didn't have a low sperm count. So then she went to the doctor and it turned out that she had fibroids, and that was what was interfering with her getting pregnant. So I figured that I would share a little bit more about my own experience trying to get pregnant and dealing with fibroids, because I've talked about it a little bit on the blog, but I haven't given like the full story. So I figured that, the episode just like triggered that desire in me to kind of share my own story, because it is definitely something that we don't talk about enough in the Black community, in the African community. Wow, in the Black or African community, we don't talk about fibroids, we don't talk about reproductive health, we don't talk about infertility, like we don't talk about this stuff at all or enough, really at all. So yeah, I figured that I would share my own experience. So hopefully I can get through this video without getting emotional. It is something that I am, really grateful that I am able to be on the other side of it and like have a beautiful son. But yeah, sometimes I think I see my son as like an exception and not necessarily, like I don't know if I'm like healed from infertility. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just start from the beginning. When Jonathan and I decided to try to have a baby, I really thought like in 6 months, like we'd have a baby. I think that the statistics are like 80+% of people who are trying to conceive within the first 6 months. And I have been always like an A student. Like I've always been like the 90th percentile of like anything that I've ever done. So I, just knew that I would conceive like pretty quickly. I hadn't been on birth control for that long. I was using a low hormone birth control. I was using Skyla, an IUD. So I took out my IUD in April after our 1-year wedding anniversary. Took out my IUD and like asked the doctor like how soon could I get pregnant. She said immediately. So I really expected by like September, like I would be pregnant, right? I was not pregnant by September. I think the first time that I actually thought I was pregnant, I remember going to Essence Fest with my 2 really good friends, and my period I think was like 3 days late. So the first day that we got there, I was like, yo guys, I can't drink. Like I'm not drinking because I like think I might be pregnant. Then I think the next, that was like day 1. On day 2 was a Sunday. I won't forget. It was a Sunday. I had woken up early in the morning, maybe like 6 or 7, and gone to the bathroom and then saw that I was bleeding. And was really devastated. I think that was the first month that I like really thought that I was pregnant and then wasn't pregnant. And this would end up being a common theme for me for like another like 6 months, essentially, from July until getting pregnant again the following March or April. So July, August, September, October, November, January, February, March. 8 months. I've had some drinking now. I've had a whole like cider, so I'm a little woozy, but 8 months passed, and every single month, maybe with the exception of one of those months, my cycle was late at least 2 days. And I had been before that, like I had a very regular cycle, like 30 days, 31 days, my period had come. But when I was trying to get pregnant, my period would always be late, which meant that for 8 months, there were 2 or 3 days where I thought I was pregnant. And every single time that I wasn't pregnant was just really difficult. I think that as a Christian woman, as an African, the narratives that I was told my whole life was like, don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex, you'll get pregnant, right? So you don't have sex. You listen to your parents, you listen to the church, you don't have sex, you don't do anything that, will like tarnish your reproductive system. You like don't have an abortion, you don't take birth control outside of, whatever. But then it comes time to the time where you like desire for a baby and it doesn't happen. I think at that point, I really did question, like, what was the point? And I really felt like, okay, like if I can't get pregnant at 26, 27? 27. If I can't get pregnant at 27, then like I should have gotten pregnant at 17. Like I should have just gotten like knocked up when I was young, because if my eggs or if my reproductive system isn't working at this age, then like I should have had a baby. I always wanted to be a mom. Like I should have had a baby like when I could have a baby. So these are a whole bunch of things that were going on in my mind. But that July July was the first time that I really felt like my heart really plummeted, like when my period came, like when I wasn't pregnant. And then after I wasn't pregnant, then I like drank excessively because I was like, you know, I'm not pregnant, so I'm just like gonna drink. Which in retrospect makes me sound like an alcoholic, but not an alcoholic. But the second time that I was really convinced that I was pregnant and then ended up being really sad that I wasn't pregnant was around my birthday. So after my birthday, my 27th birthday? No, 26th birthday. 29th birthday. What year was this? 28th birthday. After my 28th birthday in 2018, I remember distinctly like blowing out the candles at my birthday. Oh yeah, so I had a birthday, like, I don't know, like meet and greet. So I distinctly remember blowing out candles, and Jonathan had surprised me with a really beautiful cake. So I distinctly remember blowing out the candles and, you know, making a wish during my candles. And I prayed and I wished for God to grant me pregnancy, like God to give me a baby. And then like 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, it was time for my period to come, and it was a couple of days late, and I was like, you know, yay, like I'm getting pregnant. And I was pregnant. I took a pregnancy test and it was positive, and I was really happy, and we were really happy. And then the next morning I started bleeding. So I had a miscarriage. I had an early miscarriage. And it was just really difficult. It was really difficult. I didn't really know who to talk to. Didn't know anyone who had, really, you know, in real life who had experienced a miscarriage. And yeah, I really just felt like I had done everything right. Like I had like not had that many sexual partners, and none of this matters. Like let me just preface, like none of this matters at all. But in my mind, I just feel like, you know, and this is a problematic approach to Christianity and religion, but like the feeling that if you like live right and don't do anything wrong, then like God should reward you with good things and like your life should be easy. But that's just not the way that life works. Like there are people who do very good things, who, you know, who die young, who lose loved ones at a young age. And there are people who live reckless, like trash lives and like seem to be, I don't know, thriving. So like, who knows, you know, in the spiritual realm, like how, you know, things are decided, like how people's lives work. But I was really upset. I felt like up to that point, like I had led not a perfect life, but a pretty decent, morally upstanding life. And the fact that I wasn't able to get pregnant really hurt me and really made me angry at God. It made me really frustrated, really made me question God, question my faith. So that was September. And I just remember being so angry with God, and just feeling like he'd really like let me down, and I had done everything right, and I like lived a good life, and like there was nothing to show for it. So the reason why I bring up the girlfriends episode is because towards the end of the year, I told myself like, okay, if like a couple of more months pass and nothing happens, then you should see a fertility doctor. Because it had been like the 6 months had passed, and usually they say like if you don't get pregnant within a year, if you're under 35, within a year, then you should see a fertility specialist. So it had been, I mean, a year would have been like April really since we started trying, but I remember like Valentine's Day came, or like, you know, early February came, and another day, like another like late period. And I was like, I need to see a fertility specialist. So I went to a fertility specialist and got some tests done, had an ultrasound done, had I'm forgetting the name of the test done. Isn't it HCG? I think it's an HCG, but I'm put the information down below. But had like a test done where they like inject saline, I think, into your uterus and like see if they can x-ray your fallopian tubes to kind of like really see like what's going on. So I had that test done, and then I had some blood work done and hormone levels checked. And then also Jonathan had gotten some work done too. So all of this happened on Valentine's Day. This I will not forget. On Valentine's Day, yeah, it was 2019. So Valentine's Day 2019, I spent the morning in the doctor's office getting testing done to see why I couldn't have a baby, why I couldn't conceive. Tough times, a really tough way to spend Valentine's Day. But once my test results came back, two things were revealed. One was that I had fibroids. So if you don't know what fibroids are, they are, and I'm not a medical doctor, so please consult medical advice about this, but they are growths that can happen either inside your uterus or on the outside of your uterus, and they can sometimes interfere with your cycle, with your reproductive health. So I had fibroids inside my uterus, like in the uterine. Oh, they could also be in the uterine wall lining. So I think mine were inside the uterus itself, and they were pretty sizable. I think they were like, one was like 5 centimeters, which is, I don't know, like this, 5, yeah, maybe like this. One was 3 centimeters, and then I think one was 8 centimeters. Different size fibroids. So that was one thing. And then the second thing that I was told was that I had a blocked fallopian tube, one completely blocked fallopian tube and another partially blocked fallopian tube. And if your fallopian tubes are blocked, then an egg cannot descend for a sperm to meet it. Hope that anatomy is correct, but I am a little sad right now. So not thinking or in biological terms, but hearing that news was really tough. Like, to hear that your body is not functioning in a way that it should function that will help you get pregnant was just not at all anything that I ever expected to hear. Again, especially being young, like in my 20s, like never having a kid before. Again, this does not matter about like not having had an abortion or anything. I feel like people tell you like, don't have an abortion because you'll like mess up your body, right? In like reality, like that's actually not like how it works. I mean, yes, maybe if you have like an underground abortion, but regardless, like I thought that there was nothing in my history that explained my inability to conceive or that explained my blocked fallopian tubes. And so it was really just difficult to internalize that message, to internalize that I, had fibroids that, even if first I had blocked fallopian tubes that would make it really difficult to get pregnant. And then if I did get pregnant, I had fibroids that were sizable enough that they could really interfere with my pregnancy. So given that information, the doctor recommended that we pursue IVF. And it was such a terrible, like his bedside manner was awful. It was like such a terrible conversation. While telling us that we like needed to, or that we should pursue IVF, he also like picked up the phone, and then his grandchild, or I think his son had called announcing the birth of like his grandchild. And I was just like, well, this is really not the time to be talking about how you have a new member of your family, like while I'm trying to have a member of my family and not being able to. So I left that visit just being like, okay, I will think about this later. I'm just going to like think about it later. I don't have time right now. I was finishing up my dissertation. So I was trying to write. So I told myself that I, would figure it out in June. This was February, March, April, May, June. So like 5 months, like just finish the dissertation, finish writing, get the degree, and then you can think about like how you're going to raise money for IVF and how you're going to figure that out. Fast forward, I didn't end up needing IVF. I ended up conceiving naturally. There's a whole nother testimony that has to do with that. It has to do with the power of prayer, but I'll save that for another time. But I just say all this to say that I think we do need to talk more about women's struggle sometimes to conceive and like what that means internally, like when you're told that your body can't function to do something that is so like quote unquote natural. Like women have been giving birth since Eve, like, it's like a pretty straightforward thing, getting pregnant. And so many people get pregnant like accidentally or have unwanted pregnancies. I think that's something that really pained me, that it was like, I want this so bad and I can't have it, whereas some people don't want it and end up having it. If you're struggling with infertility, if you're struggling with conceiving and that's something that you really want, or if you're dealing with fibroids and maybe they are causing complications with your cycle and with your periods, maybe you have endometriosis or PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. If any of those categories fit you, I just want to encourage you to talk to someone. That's all I've got for you today. Talk to someone. I can't like in good faith tell you to pray. I mean, you should, you could pray about it, but that's the last thing that I wanted to hear at that time was to pray. Because I was like, I've been praying. Like I have prayed. I have asked God. I have got on my knees. I have cried. So yes, if you are a person of faith, pray, but also just talk to someone about it. It really helps me when I was able to open up to people about what I was going through. It also helps to have other people praying for me in a moment where I couldn't pray because I was so angry. I remember this one time when I was talking to my mom and I had no intention of telling my mom. Like what was happening. This was shortly after the miscarriage, and I was on the phone with her and she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "No, nothing's wrong, nothing." She's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Nothing's wrong." She's like, "Ijeoma, something is wrong. I'm your mother. I know that something is wrong. Just tell me. And then I told her. And it was really healing to be able to tell her and talk to her, because then I knew that she was now praying for me. So I couldn't pray for myself anymore because I was angry, as I said, but she prayed for me and she really encouraged me. And the sound of my son laughing is just like really making me really happy right now. But yeah, that is just all I wanted to say. This episode really reminded me of that because, you know, Maya was struggling to conceive. Just made me want to tell my story a little bit. But if that's something that you're going through, if that's something you're struggling with, know that you're not alone. This is not uncommon. When I started doing research on how common miscarriages were, how common fibroids were, like I was really shocked because I feel like no one had talked about it before. It is really common. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body is perfectly fine, and God will give you the desires of your heart one way or another. One way or another, whether that's biological or not, God will give you the desires of your heart. I wholeheartedly believe that. And yeah, I'm going to have to save my own story for how I did end up getting pregnant for another day, because it's a story. It is definitely a story. But God's faithful, even when we don't believe, even when we don't, have faith, he's still faithful. And that's one of the great things that I love about God, is that his nature doesn't change based off of how we feel about him, right? It's like, even if we don't trust him, even if we don't believe him, even if we're not praying, like he's still working. He's still the same God. Like he's still powerful. He's still omnipresent. He's still omnipotent, regardless of how we feel about him, and regardless of what we're thinking, regardless of whether we're praying or not. Like he's still doing what he's doing. I think that honestly is like one of my favorite aspects, components of like who God is. Like he's always looking out for us, even when we don't think about, or even when we don't believe, even when we don't see him looking out for us. So that's my little story, guys. It definitely was a very interesting and very raw. I don't know if I could have told that if I hadn't like had this glass of cider that I just had. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. Like it was such a tough time. Oh, so the other thing that I wanted to say is that, now, people ask me like, okay, do you want more kids? And the answer is yes. Yes, I would absolutely love more kids. But going through that experience, there's definitely still a part of me that feels like, our son was an exception, and that like, there's something still wrong with my body. And I know, I'm sure my mom's gonna watch this and call me and and encourage me. But I think I am kind of worried to start like actively trying to have a kid, because I don't want to go through that again. Like I don't want to go through the waiting. I don't want to go through I'm 3 days late. Like I took so many pregnancy tests. Like I took so many pregnancy tests. And I don't want to go through that again. So yeah, I think I do want another kid. I would love a little girl. I love to have a girl, but I can't go through that whole like waiting game again. So that's really how I'm feeling right now. I am really scared. If anyone has like had a bout of infertility, and I was like, I technically, according to the definition of infertility, I didn't have infertility. I had 1 more month. So I got pregnant in March, and you are technically infertile if you're under 35 and take more than a year to conceive. That is the technical definition of infertility. It took me 11 months to conceive. So I like just missed the mark. But if you're dealing with infertility, if you desire to have a baby and it's been difficult for you, just know that my heart is really with you. Then on the other side, if you have gone through that and then had a baby and then had another baby, then I need your encouragement in the comments, because that's, I think, what I'm really struggling with now. This idea that it is possible for me to have another kid without, taking like an entire year. So yeah, shout out to Girlfriends we watched this like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Like I was not at all thinking about these topics that they were covering, but this is definitely one of my favorite shows of all time. The content is timeless. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. This was a very raw conversation. So yeah, that's all. Check y'all guys in the next video.